and happy Sunday to you. Sarah from Funky Fossil here, and we're back with our second episode of Make It Sunday. It's going to be a weekly video that I put onto YouTube with ideas and inspirations for using your Funky Fossil products or anything you've got in your stash, just ideas for different techniques or things that maybe you've forgotten that you already knew. This week I thought we'd have a little play with a fairly recently released Ocean Dreams. So we've got our Dream Whale, which has been designed by Kim Dello for Dello Designs, and this beautiful Sea in Bloom stencil. And what I've got in my mind is that we're going to do a few stenciling techniques that will then give us some backgrounds that we can put into our journal that we're slowly filling up on a week by week basis. As always with Make It Sunday, these two items will be discounted in the shop all week until we publish our next episode next Sunday. So there'll be 20% off this little bundle of products if you want to do something using exactly the same designs as I'm going to work with today. But really it's all about technique, and I'd love to see you share any makes that you create using similar ideas and techniques that we're going to do in today's video. Please remember as well to like and subscribe to my channel, and all the comments that you leave on this video really help me keep the content visible on YouTube and grow our channel as well. So thank you very much for doing that. Right. What I'm going to do is a couple of kind of quite messy backgrounds, I think, with Sea in Bloom. It's a lovely stenciling that's got lots of detail in it, so it lends itself to lots of different techniques. And I thought we'd have a little play, because I haven't played with them for ages. Have a little play with our sprays. So I've got here some Lindy's sprays. I've got some Distress Oxide spray. You, I'm sure, at home will have lots of different sprays, and of course use them together. You can get lots of fantastic effects, because obviously they're all designed to do something slightly different. So for example, your Lindy's have got mica in them, your Distress Oxides will give you a slightly more mottled kind of oxidized look. So you're always going to get a different effect using each of these sprays, and when you combine them you can get some really unusual backgrounds. They're messy though. Sprays are messy. So I've already got a sheet of A3 paper down on my desk here to catch the overspray. Lots of you probably have spray boxes and things that enable you to contain that spray, but obviously for filming purposes I want to try and keep the desk as clear as possible, so the A3 is going to protect my glass mat. So I'm going to get a little bit of cardstock here. I've cut my cardstock down to be a size that's going to fit into our A5 journal that we're working in. So I've already kind of got this cut down to size. Excuse me, I've still got a bit of a nasty cold, so I'm a little bit hoarse today. So you can see here that this stencil isn't going to cover the whole area that we're going to be working on, which is fine, because again I'm going for a fairly abstract, loose background. If you want a crisp, detailed impression with your stencils, sprays probably aren't the way to go, because just the very nature of how watery they are, you will potentially get some bleed and some of that image softening. So this is very much for those of you that like to get colour down on your backgrounds, do something quite abstract but aren't too worried about how precise the finish will be. So I have already got blue on my hands, because I did just check before I put the cameras on that these sprays were still spraying. My sprays always clog up. I'm not very good at cleaning the nozzles. So I'm just reactivating them by giving them a little bit of a shake. You can hear in the oxide spray that that's got a ball bearing in. It's going to activate or move the pigment that's settled at the bottom. And the Lindy's, of course, will have, not all of the Lindy's have mica in, but I think these ones do. I've got Top Hat Teal, just in case you want the exact colours. Top Hat Teal. I've got Uncharted Marinette in the Distress, and this one is Tibetan Poppy Teal, which I think has to be my favourite Lindy's ever. And of course I'm going with these blues and turquoises because I'm going for a kind of fairly watery look here to kind of provide a nice background for our whale from the Ocean Dreams stamp set. So I'm going to just move my, I've not got anything stuck down here with masking tape. I'm just going to move the spray with my hand as I'm spraying. So you can see there, oh, there's a lot came out there, didn't there? In fact, I'm just going to leave that one at the bottom. Go with this bit of the Tibetan. And what I'm trying to do, you can see here, what I love about sprays is they often spray in very different ways. So you can get your nice arc of spray, you can get quite splatty sprays, and this one's giving me quite a kind of a splattery one, quite a mottled one. So what I'm going to do is just lift this up and see what we've got. As I say, there's a lot of colour there you can see already. So, and it fades out towards the top, which is exactly what I wanted. You can see here how beautiful that is. I'm going to leave this stencil to one side because of course we've got lots of colour on there, so we're going to go for a second print from it. But you can see, although it isn't precise, as in it's not going to give you an absolutely defined line, you still very much got the pattern emerging there from the sprays. So don't be timid with your sprays. Make sure you get your colour down in a nice sweep and just work with what it gives you. So I'm pleased with that. I've got a little bit of a line here, but we'll be able to absolutely work around that because I'm going to turn this page around in a second and spray from the top. But I've got all this beautiful colour already on this stencil. So I think I'm just going to try and pick that up and do a second print. So we're going to get the reverse of the stencil here. I'm just going to, which way down should I do it? That way? Yeah, I think I will. Yes. So I'm just going to lay a separate piece of cardstock down over the top of this inky stencil. Let me get a piece of paper just so that I can press it down without getting ink absolutely all over myself. I'm almost like stamping with the stencil now. Again, you don't know what you're going to get, you don't know how much of the impression you're going to get, but it's going to get you started on another background. And we're not going to be wasting that ink. So I like that. You can see there, let me show you the contrast, where now you're picking up the actual line art of the stencil rather than the aperture in between. So you're picking up where the ink is sitting on the stencil surface itself. There's still loads more colour on this stencil, but I'm not going to spend time trying to lift that now because I want to just do another quick spray on the top of this journal page. So I'm just mopping it up on the kind of paper I've got here to protect my surface. I could use this again, of course I could use this another time. You could spritz this with water and keep going. I'm not going to do that now, but you get the idea. So let me just have a think. So I want to just try and kind of, I'm not wanting a full solid background here, but I do want a little bit of colour in this corner so it doesn't look like it's reached such an abrupt end. So I'm just going to put the stencil, not cleaned it as you can see. Now that Uncharted Mariner was quite powerful, wasn't it? So let me just spray a little bit off the page. You can see there I'm just going to get a little bit of that the page captured. And where's my Tibetan Poppy Teal? It's got beautiful mica in this one. Perfect. I'm not going to do, she says, I'm not going to do any more than that because again, say I'm still wanting to leave some white space in the middle of this page, or a paler space should we say, because obviously you can see now I've covered up most of it. But what I'm trying to do is ensure that I don't end up with any very obvious straight lines where the stencil ends. But we've got our dark colours in each corner. I really like that. And of course we're going to put a focal point, we're going to put other detail on this page so your eye won't be drawn to any borders that you've created. And once this is dry, we'll kind of hold it up to the camera again and hope we're to capture some of the mica that's in the Lindy's. Of course, the oxide is a matte spray. I know Distress now do some fabulous mica-based spritzes, and there's the Distress Spray stains. So again, just get all of your sprays out and give them a go, and you'll get lots of fabulous different effects. I'm working with what I had here in the colours that I thought would work best for this particular background. Now I'm just going to, again, we've still got lots of ink going on here, so let me try spraying this with some water just off camera, and then we'll put it down on the base, on the page that we've already used for some mop up. And I'll get my paper to protect my hands again. And you can keep going like this for ages, and I do quite often. Once I've got my sprays out, I don't use them as often as I should, but once I have got them out, I do tend to have a good old session with them. Oh, I like that. That is a nice print at the top there. Can you see it? And all kind of the different colours of kind of merged there. That's going to be a really nice background. So if you like your backgrounds not quite as intense with their colour, then the stamp off that you get with the second stage with the stencil can be a good alternative, can't it? How cool is that? Right, I'm going to put these two on the side. I'm going to have a quick tidy up, and then I'm going to come back with another stencil technique using the same stencil and using similar colours, but we're going to do a bit of stencil lifting, and then we're going to have a range of different options to use as the background for our journal page. So I shall see you in a minute. Okay, I'm going to jump straight into the second technique here. And while I was just tidying away from using my sprays, I then went ahead and inked a separate piece of cardstock in a range of Distress Oxides. So I used Peacock Feathers, Uncharted Mariner and Chipped Sapphire. Really similar colour combinations we used in the sprays. You can see I've gone ahead and added a blend of these inks to my journal page. I've gone in quite heavy-handed because I'm wanting to do a version of, you know, when you kind of spritz water onto your distressed backgrounds and you can lift the ink. I'm wanting to see what effect I can get by spraying water through my stencil and lifting some of the ink to get a kind of a watery stencil image here. So I'm going to do this fairly quickly because you're going to get your best results while the ink is still fairly damp and reactive. Once it's dry, once it's dry, it will always still react unless you seal it, but it becomes less reactive. So I'm wanting to just try and get as much ink up as I can. So I've gone in with my water bottle, sprayed directly onto the cardstock through the stencil. I'm leaving it a second or two, like you would do before you lift colour with a kind of flick of water. I have done this technique before, but I've tended to use a kind of a baby wipe or wet wipe to lift the ink, which of course gives you quite a precise impression. I don't have any wet wipes at the moment. I'm trying to reduce the amount I use them, so I'm hoping that this effect will work too. It may not be quite so detailed, but it will still, I think, give me the impression of the stencil. We shall see. So I'm leaving the stencil in place and I'm just mopping up with kitchen towel, and I think I might give it another little spritz of water as well, and then we can just dab into those areas. You can see that the ink is coming off. This will give me I think this will give me a fairly pale impression, but quite a nice underwater atmospheric look. Another way of doing this would be to wet my kitchen towel and go in as well. Let's see what I'm getting here. And of course the oxides being as they are, they will continue to react for a little while. Can you see that coming through? That looks so cool. So I don't want to oversaturate my cardstock because of course I'll lose the definition of the stencil and just it will all bleed underneath. And I'm focusing on this darker area of the journal page because obviously as I've got that kind of going into a faded lighter area, you're going to get less contrast, the image is going to be less visible. Let's try spritzing directly onto a piece of kitchen towel, spritzing water onto the kitchen towel. So this is also kind of often called a kind of bleach out effect. You don't want your kitchen towel to be super wet again, because it will just press the water underneath the stencil design. Let's see. I think that's enough. I really like this. Should we blast it with a heat gun? And this is the kind of look I was kind of going for, was the idea there's a shaft of light coming through the water, and now with that kind of that pale bleach out from the stencil, I really do think it looks like you've got light coming through the water. I'm just going to give that a quick blast with the heat gun, and then we'll do this top corner as well. And as with distress with kind of water, if you leave it to react naturally in its own time, that kind of reaction will continue on for longer than you realise. So I probably stopped its development a little bit by heat setting it there. So again, try leaving the water on the stencil on the paper for longer and see whether you can get a deeper contrast. Let's just go into this corner here. What shall I do? Shall I go straight? Let's go straight in with the paper towel rather than the spritz with water. See, so just a couple of spritzes onto my paper towel. It's not soaking, but it's got a good amount of moisture on there. And again, I'm just focusing on the darker areas of the blend, where that image is going to be more visible when I lift the ink. I can see it coming up. One of the kind of top tips I would give with this technique is being aware of the cardstock you're using. So this cardstock isn't full watercolour card, but it is like a mixed media card. So if you use a cardstock that has a propensity to drink your ink and suck that moisture in quite quickly, it will be harder to get it to release the colour. Whereas if you use a watercolour cardstock or a cardstock that is designed for you to do different techniques on it, you are more likely to be able to lift some of that colour up. But certainly I've always got my best results doing this when the ink has been still relatively freshly applied. I couldn't have done this, I couldn't have coloured this page and come back to it tomorrow and got the ink to lift in quite the same way. Let's see, do I want to? Yeah, I think I'm going to spray this. This may be not going to release quite as much ink as the bottom half, because I've been chattering on and the ink's dried a bit more, but I can see actually it's lifting nicely here, so maybe it just did need that intensity of the water being sprayed rather than just a damp cloth. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's gonna look really nice. Look at that. So that's just where the water is still wet on the surface, but you're going to get a nice impression. So there's two very different looks you've got here, both kind of using a spray technique in one respect, in that one is spraying water and the other is spraying an ink. You can see here, just using that same kind of colour combination, 3 very different looks. We've got our bleach out on our inked surface. We've got the sprays going through the stencil directly onto the cardstock, the ink sprays, and this is the stamp off, where you can see, particularly like this top area here, where I use the ink that has settled on the stencil and stamped it off onto a separate piece of card. So 3 very quick and easy backgrounds and 3 different looks, either by spraying water or spraying ink. I'm going to have a quick tidy up, and then we'll create some focal points to go in our journal pages using the glorious stamps from Ocean Dreams. See you again in a second. So let's just finish this journal page off. You can see what I've done so far, just to kind of bring the page together, is covered one of the sides of my journal, my A5 journal, with some of the beautiful papers from our Ocean Dreams paper pad, because I think the colourway is going to work perfectly with the inks that we've been using today. So I've covered that page with some pattern paper, made a little pocket, and then I've used the spray background that we created at the beginning of this video to make a tag. So that's kind of obviously featuring our Sea in Bloom stencil. I think that's going to be lovely to go in that pocket with details of the techniques that I've used today. We've now got the other page where I decided to use the ink blended background with the bleached out stencil effect. I think that's really kind of got a really lovely serene feel to it. And I've stamped and coloured the beautiful dream whale from our kind of Ocean Dreams stamp set, and I think he works perfectly there. I've coloured him in with the same inks that I've used in the background, so I know it's all going to coordinate nicely together. So I think that looks great. I'm just feeling that there's probably not quite enough contrast on these pages. It needs a little bit of white or something just to lift the general colourway. So that's what I'm going to do now. I haven't stuck this page in, so I'm able to kind of stamp and work directly on it before we adhere it into the final layout. And I think I'm going to use the lovely, it's kind of really cool abstract stamp from the Ocean Dream stamp set. It's almost like kind of like an algae kind of squiggle, but of course if you weren't using it in a sea themed context, then it could be just a general kind of mark making tool for you. And I'm going to white heat emboss this squiggly image a few times on my journal page, just to give it a little bit of contrast. I'm hoping this is all dried well enough now that I'm not going to get embossing powder sticking where I don't want it. And I'm looking around, I'm sure, oh there we go, I'm sure I have my anti-static bag with me. I'm thinking I will put a sentiment up in this corner where it's quite dark tone, so I'm probably not going to stamp it in there. I'm going to probably put my words up in that corner, and I'm going to have my whale kind of swimming along this shaft of light that we've got in our background. So some sticky ink, some embossing ink, and I'm going to stamp this squiggle a couple of times on the background, stamping off the page so it's not looking like it's been plonked too deliberately anywhere specific, just tessellating it around. I don't really need an awful lot of it. I just think that kind of a bit of white heat embossing will just lift the overall colour. This will be quite a cool kind of monochromatic journal page, won't it? And we'll go in here. So I typically like to go in threes onto journal pages, or on cards for that matter. I'm sure you'll have heard that kind of rule of threes for giving your eye somewhere to travel. Now I'm looking for a piece of paper that I can use. This isn't one that I should be using, so please ignore the text on the paper. Right, white heat embossing powder, This is this is super fine. Now I need to try and remember where on earth I did my stamping. Oh dear. Oh, missed it completely there. There we go. So off to the side. And even before I add the heat to turn the powder, you can see it's going to make a real difference to just the general kind of light on this page. It's just going to lift it a little bit. And by having them in that kind of vaguely triangular configuration, it's also going to mean that our whale is going to be nicely framed as well. Shall I take a risk and stamp the sentiment at the same time before I apply the heat? So this is another sentiment that are stamped directly from the Dream Whale stamp set, which will be part of our little Sunday Makers bundle this week, just the stamp set and the stencil. It says, dream higher than the sky and deeper than the ocean. I'll just pop it up in that corner. I want to have it against the relatively dark colour, so the white heat embossing will show. I always think to myself with this sentiment, if it doesn't go right, then I can literally stamp it on a separate piece of card and adhere it over, so I never worry too much about my sentiments. So I think that one's come out nicely. Now, let's heat set this. And we're nearly there. That's going to look really nice. So although that Sea and Bloom stencil is a busy stencil, it's got a lot of detail in it, you can see here how by using that kind of bleach out technique, it's given us interest and visual interest in the background, but it's not overly dominant. So remember, with your kind of busier stencils, there are techniques you could use that's still going to leave quite a subtle effect. Excuse me. So we're going to have our whale here, and I think the only thing that I need to do just to finish this page off is add some white splatters. I'm going to use my Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, because I've got a lot of water reactive inks on here. So if I use other kinds of white ink, it might lift the blue and just kind of not have quite the same contrast. I'm looking around for a little paintbrush to pull this out of the pot. You really don't need to use much of this. It's quite a solid, you can see this is quite a solid ink. It doesn't move around. You kind of almost can scoop it out the pot, dilute it with water to whatever consistency you want to go for. And it lasts for ages. If this is what you're using it for, splatter, then yeah, you're gonna be getting a lot of use out of a small pot of this ink for a long time. Just using a fan brush to give me some splatter there. Right, I won't adhere this page into my journal just yet, because obviously I'll let my splatters dry. But I'll just place it here so you can see the finished effect that we've achieved. We've had lots of fun with the spraying, the ink sprays, and that's what I've used for the tag. So that same design is echoed across the two pages. We've got our lovely rich blues there, that ink lift from the stencil, and our whale swimming across that kind of shaft of light in the ocean. And I do think that stamping has just lifted that page and made it a little bit more visually interesting. So I hope you've enjoyed this week's Make It Sunday. Please do leave a comment below in terms of what you enjoyed about the technique, whether you'll be trying it yourself. Remember, you can get the products that I've used today, the stamp and the stencil, in store this week with 20% off. And I look forward to seeing you again for some more techniques and inky fun next Sunday. But bye for now. Thanks a lot.